Hey guys, welcome to the New Earth Project. I'm David Caxero, and today I want to talk about 9 principles that will help you on your spiritual journey, help you with your spiritual growth. So, before we get into it, what I mean by spiritual growth is not necessarily to grow spiritually. I think the idea of spiritual growth is kind of a psychological concept that we've created. What I mean by it is further immersing yourself in the truth of who you are, really coming to a self-realization, a state of self-realization within yourself, letting go or not being as embedded in the delusions of our conditioned mind. So this is what I mean by spiritual growth, and these are some principles that will help you with this. So the first one on the list is expanding our awareness. I think this is the most fundamental piece of any type of awakening experience. Spiritual awakening is just expanding our awareness around the truth of who we are, which is not the personal self that we've seen ourselves to be. You know, you kind of see through the delusions of the world, the illusion of the world, I should say, the matrix, the systems that we've lived in. You begin to unravel truth within yourself, and that's all expanding our awareness is. We begin to become aware of these truths, and in becoming aware, the more we can expand our awareness, the more we strengthen the connection with our true self, the more the conditioned mind, the ego, the personal self begins to fade. It doesn't have as much of a hold over us in our lives. The next tip is, or principle, is being mindful and present. And this really just helps with expanding our awareness. The more mindful or conscious we can be of ourselves in every moment, the more aware we become of the thoughts running through our head, the emotions that we feel, the urges. We become aware of our actions, everything. And the more aware we can become, the more mindful we can be of ourselves, the more of a conscious choice we have over ourselves, the more we can begin to separate ourselves from the thoughts, the emotions, our actions, whatever we're doing. We no longer see ourselves as the character playing life. We begin to separate ourselves from the character. We're not as identified with the thoughts, emotions, behaviors, right? We can just observe them. So being mindful and being present really help with that. Also, being present is a really good way of strengthening that spiritual connection with yourself, because all there is the timeless present moment. Past, future really don't exist. Those are mental concepts. And the more we live from the mind, the further away we're pulled from our spiritual being, so to speak. The more the noise of the mind covers up that spiritual awareness, and we're less attuned with our true self. So being present, which is almost to be completely, almost void of thought. In the truest form of presence, you're just completely here. It's a dimension within ourselves. A lot of times we think that the present moment it's the thoughts, or it's the sounds, the sights, the experience of what is happening right now. That is happening on the stage of life. The stage. Think about it this way: if the play of life is happening on the stage, things are coming and going on the stage, right? But the one thing that stays the same throughout the whole play is the stage. That is the present moment. And the present moment isn't anything outside of you. The play is happening outside of you. The present moment is that ever-present spaciousness within yourself. It's a dimension of consciousness within you. And so being mindful and present will really, really help you with that spiritual connection, reconnecting with yourself and strengthening that spiritual connection. Okay, number 3 is follow your intuition. And I'm really, really big on this. I believe that our intuition is it's a greater intelligence speaking to us. it's the truth of who we are, so to speak. It's connected to something much greater than our own, rational mind, right? Our own intellect, the human intellect. Our intuition is connected to, call it the universe, call it God, call it source, but it's this infinite intelligence that is responsible and underlies all of creation. That is seated within us. It's actually really the truth of who we are at our core. And the more we can listen to that intuition, the more we strengthen that becomes the more prominent voice within us, our internal guidance system. We're no longer guided by the conditioned mind of fear, and so the more that we can listen to that intuition with the smallest decisions, the stronger it becomes within us, and the more we're guided on a higher path, a path that is aligned with maybe our true purpose in being here, because no one was put here by accident. We all took form on this planet this time for a reason. And I'm a big believer that following our intuition will only guide us to the greatest path of healing, our own evolution of consciousness, awakening, whatever that looks like. It catalyzes or expedites the process. I don't think that you can ever stop the evolution of consciousness, but when we follow our intuition, it's a direct connection to our own spiritual center. So to me, it's a very, very important principle in spiritual growth. Okay, the fourth principle is live simply. And living simply, it could be in terms of mentally and physically. When we're cluttered, when we have a lot of things, we become distracted. And that could be always keeping ourselves busy with things, mental distractions, overly stimulating our mind with phones and technology or, anything, podcasts, books, whatever. But then also having too much stuff. It's all clutter. It stimulates the mind. And the more we stimulate the mind, the more cluttered it becomes, the louder it becomes, right? And the more we live from those loud, egoic, conditioned voices, right? We just add to the noise of the mind. The key for spiritual connection, reconnecting with your true self, is quieting the mind, decluttering the mind. Because in that, the mind begins to still, it begins to settle and balance out through observation, through stillness. And from there, you begin to reconnect with your true self, rather than always living from the busy mind and the conditioned mind, the personal you, right? So decluttering or living simply is really, really, it's been really big in my life, just to help me reconnect with myself and on this path of spiritual growth. Okay, number 5 is trust, allow, surrender. These are all kind of synonyms for the same thing. And it's just, what it means is to let go. Let go of your own plans, your own expectations, the personal you, the beliefs, This process of awakening or strengthening your spiritual connection or self-realization, all of these things, it's a shedding. It's a letting go of yourself. It's a psychological death, so to speak. And so when we can trust life a little bit more, when we can allow life, the present moment and what's unfolding, to guide us, we become more in touch. As I said, the present moment is kind of the direct connection to higher consciousness or spiritual realms, or however you want to put it. And so when we can trust or allow or surrender our own will to something that's greater, we align ourselves with that spiritual flow, so to speak, rather than forcing our own way. We go with the flow of life. And as I said, there's an intelligence that underlies all of life's creation, all of the unfolding of events. It's all connected. And if we can learn to go with that flow, to surrender our will, as I said, we could catalyze that process of awakening or whatever. But then again, strengthen that connection with our own spiritual center. Okay, number 6 is take responsibility. And this is a really big one. I think a lot of people that go through some sort of spiritual awakening realize that our life experience is completely our own responsibility, our own making. Our personal reality is our own creation. And so taking responsibility and being accountable for your own personal experience, internal state, realizing that we live life from the inside out, not the outside in, that it's not the things outside of us that cause problems inside, it's the way that we are assigning meaning or interpreting what happens outside of us. When we begin to point the finger at ourselves, that is such a powerful way to really, again, strengthen that spiritual connection, to really let go of yourself. Because a lot of times, again, that conditioned mind, that ego likes to point the finger at other people or other things and blame. But when we take responsibility, when we realize that it's all us, it's all our own making for our own life, and when we can pair that with surrender, principle number 5, we become much more attuned with our spiritual self. Number 7 is self-discipline. And self-discipline is the trait that will really help you with this transformation. Changing your ways, making a different decision. Because as I said, the more we act from the mind, the more we strengthen those patterns within us, the louder the mind becomes, and the more we are disconnected from our true self. And so if we can be disciplined, if we can expand our self-awareness, be aware of what our intuition is telling us, what is truly right within our own heart, when we can be aware of that, and when we can take accountability, take responsibility for ourselves, and realize that it's our own, we're in charge of ourselves. And then when we can put in the self-discipline to really make a change, do something different, listen to that intuition, live in practice with the awareness that we have, these things, especially the self-discipline piece, will really catapult you into higher states of consciousness, really helping you to strengthen that spiritual connection, embed yourself in that truth of who you are, and further let go of the conditioned mind. Self-discipline is super important, and it's a muscle that we can all strengthen within ourselves. I see it as a very important mental muscle that we can strengthen through practice, consistent practice. Number 8 is symbolic sight. And I actually got this idea, this term, from a book that I was reading by Caroline Myss. And symbolic sight is basically looking at your life and what happens in your life on a deeper level, realizing that nothing that happens in life is purely physical. It's always a construct of something deeper. And through spiritual awakening, you begin to realize that your external world is just a reflection of your internal world. And so if we can look at life in that way, life becomes a mirror for us. It becomes a mirror showing us where we have trauma, where this character that we're playing is struggling, so to speak, where we can heal more. Let's put it that way. And so if we can look at life that way and look at everything that happens, the universe is always giving us messages or signs through different things. Nothing is by accident that happens outside of us. Everything that crosses your path is part of some divine order. And so if we could look at life that way, it would really catalyze our own spiritual growth and our own awakening to self-realization, because we could pick up on, if we're getting off our path, if we're living from the egoic mind, if we're not in tune with ourselves, And we could, again, as I said, use our external reality as a mirror for our own internal growth, our own internal healing and awakening. The last principle for spiritual growth is balance. And balance requires effort, but no effort at the same time. I think the most direct path to experiencing balance within our lives is to have balance within ourselves. And the way we do that is by living from that spiritual center. So if you've already had a bit of a spiritual awakening, you're kind of in this journey, on this path, the most important thing a person can do is live in practice with that awareness, with the insights that you gain through this, the truth that you discover within yourself. Live that truth. Live in alignment with it. And the more you can live in alignment with it by following your intuition or these other things that I've kind of laid out here, these other 8 principles, the more imbalance you're going to come within yourself. Because as you expand your awareness, as you become mindful, as you do these things, you begin to observe yourself. And through self-observation, the loud, noisy mind automatically begins to balance itself out. It begins to quiet down on its own. And through a mind that's in harmony, your mind has a significant impact on your physical body through your nervous system. So if your mind is continuously thinking really negative thoughts and you're always in that stress response, your nervous system is going to cause a physiological response to that. And your body is going to be out of balance. So the more in tune we can become with ourselves spiritually through these other principles, the more imbalanced the mind and the body will become. And from there, the more imbalanced we are within ourselves, the more imbalanced our lives will be outside of us. Okay? So balance is another very important piece for spiritual growth. So those are my 9 principles for spiritual growth. I really hope they help you in your life. And if there's anything that I didn't list here that you think is a really good addition to the list, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what has helped you on your spiritual journey to deeper awakening and self-realization. So thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you for the next video.